Welcome back to the Good as Gold Stock Exchange, the series where we analyze the rise and fall of Pokemon usage stats in major official tournaments. Today we're looking at the usage stats from the most recent tournament, being Vancouver 2025. It has a smaller sample size than the previous tournament, EUIC, considering this was a regional rather than an international, and Vancouver has historically had lower attendance than other regionals for a variety of reasons. It's still a major event regardless, and it often has some unique picks. As usual, we'll consider our top gainers, top losers, review last exchange's rise and fall predictions, then take a look at our prime pick for the week. Let's take a look at some of these interesting changes. Our top gainers are Iron Hands, Koraidon, Fluttermane, and Incineroar. Coming off a long cold streak, Iron Hands stocks are finally up, and 6% at that. Reaching 21% overall, it's the highest usage it's seen since Worlds. This is an incredibly powerful Pokemon with an amazing stat spread and great moves. The likely rise for this Pokemon is part of its success at EUIC, and the fact that Miraidon took the #1 place in usage for Restricteds. Iron Hands being able to pair with a Restricted to actually be able to use its ability for a stat boost is a very strong combo. Koraidon is up 4%, putting it in 5th place for Restricteds. I suspect a contributing factor in its rise was it winning EUIC, with some set innovation from Wolf running a more offensive Koraidon than we are used to seeing. I think this is also correlated to the drop in Urshifu Rapid, as they're both fighting types and compete for a team slot, especially since Urshifu Rapid doesn't like being in the sun, so they don't want to be on the same team. Building off the increased sun presence from Koraidon, Fluttermane is up 3%, likely at least partially due to the increase of Koraidon as a sunsetter. Along with Calyrex Shadow's decrease, more teams can make room for Fluttermane with less competition for a ghost type. Lastly, Incineroar also rose 3%. With the increase of Iron Hands and Koraidon, especially the fact that more Koraidon are running Life Orb over Clear Amulet, means Intimidate has become much more valuable. The decrease of Ogerpon Hearthflame also opens up more room for a Fire-type slot on teams. Our top losers are Ogerpon Hearthflame, Urshifu Rapid, and Calyrex Shadow. Ogerpon took a hit of 7%. As mentioned, the slight rise of Incineroar likely had an impact, as Ogerpon Hearthflame can't hit Incineroar very well and is vulnerable to Intimidate. Koraidon also somewhat functions as a Fire type, with Terra Fire being its most common Terra type and using Flare Blitz frequently. The demand for another Fire attacker on the same team is reduced. Urshifu Rapid saw a reduction of 6%. It maintains its hold as most used Pokemon at 49%. The decrease, as mentioned, is likely linked to the Koraidon rise and increased sun prevalence. Iron Hands also has a good matchup into Urshifu. With it rising as well, that could be another contributing factor to Urshifu's decrease. Calyrex Shadow, one of our most volatile stocks, drops 6% yet again, by far being our biggest mover as it sees a lot of fluctuation. Incineroar and Fluttermane increases likely contributed to this, as Fluttermane can outspeed with a photosynthesis boost, and Calyrex Shadow always has a hard time against Incineroar. Since all Restricteds compete for a team slot, I think a lot of players are trying out Koraidon rather than using Calyrex Shadow for this tournament. Lastly, Rillaboom is on a season-long cold streak. This tournament it only is down 1%, but with 4 consecutive drops, it's down 13% since Worlds. In summary, Miraidon takes the top restricted Pokemon for the first time all season. It had an increase of just 1%, but the prior first place Calyrex Shadow dropped 6%, leaving it in 3rd. Calyrex Ice maintained the same usage, but it moves up to 2nd place, while Zamazenta fell 2%, also maintaining 4th. Koraidon brings up the rear, just 2% behind Zamazenta in 5th place, one of the closest gaps between 4th and 5th place we've seen in some time. Urshifu, despite a 6% drop, still maintains the title of most used Pokemon. Incineroar still holds on to 2nd place with a small increase, while the tried and true Amoonguss holds on to 3rd. Fluttermane's small rise, along with Hearthflame's big drop, moves Fluttermane up to 4th. As the metagame continues developing, the non-restricted Pokemon are seeing much less shifts in usage. Reviewing last exchange's under and overvalued picks, we chose Fluttermane as our undervalued pick and predicted it would rise in usage, which it did. Last exchange we didn't choose anything in particular as overvalued, but did predict Urshifu Rapid would drop, due to its sky-high overall usage, which again we predicted correctly. I believe Koraidon is overvalued, thanks to its huge increase. I think a lot of Koraidon's increased usage is due to hype from it winning EUIC, and many people who picked it up will realize there's a reason it hasn't broken into the top 4. Its win was due to a good meta call in running max speed, and of course player skill was a contributing factor. Once players start to run faster Miraidons and Fluttermanes, as well as run more Calyrex Shadow, Koraidon will start to struggle again. Currently I believe Farigiraf is undervalued. As mentioned in previous exchanges, Farigiraf's value is heavily dependent on the meta around it, as its priority blocking Armor Tail really makes or breaks it. With a significant rise of fake-out users in Iron Hands and Incineroar, while other Pokemon like Rillaboom, Chien-Pao, and Raging Bolt still remain common, there is more priority than we have seen in some time. If Calyrex Shadow also rises, which I suspect it will, being a strong normal type will give it another good matchup. The prime pick is a Pokemon I don't think is under or overvalued, but is positioned well to do good into a changing metagame. This week's prime pick is Whimsicott. Although it is a common pick, I suspect the metagame will start to speed up, and as Pokemon start to invest in more speed, hard speed control becomes more relevant. Things like Tailwind and Trick Room have more of an impact. Whimsicott is also a great partner for Miraidon, which I believe will continue to stay in the top or second place for restricteds. Its other options like Helping Hand and Light Screen also have a lot of use in restricted formats, and it has a wide array of supportive options. There's always room for an innovative tech choice on its moveset. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Good as Gold Stock Exchange.